Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel here. If this was my last meal, I'm your host, Joaquin Ramos. And today we are going to talk about, number one, my trip to New Orleans and the different restaurants we ate there. We're going to focus on one, Commander's Palace. Now, before I get into Commander's Palace, I got to say New Orleans is just one of those cities, if you've never traveled to, go. It's a city that just screams culture. The food, the music, just the people and the history of the city. You can't. You're not going to get a better mix there. And for me, that's just one of those cities that always will hold a special place for myself and my wife. And restaurant that we're going to talk about now, Commander's Palace. Now, Commander's Palace is one of the iconic restaurants there in New Orleans. You can't go to New Orleans and not eat at Commander's Palace. That it's very difficult to get a reservation. I remember maybe it was the time of the year when I was trying to get the reservation back in December, and it was very difficult. And eventually there was a spot open for brunch. And I don't remember, it was really early. I think we went at 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. And I am so happy that we went because it just really blew me away. Now I'm going to show you my out of the restaurant review first, and then we're going to come back on the other side and talk about all the dishes and overall my experience. We're here to do another restaurant review of Commander's Palace here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Just finished eating here at Commander's Palace and ranking my top 5 favorite foods. Number 5 was the strawberry shortcake. Number 4 was the bread pudding. Number 3 was the turtle soup. Number 2 was the quail. And my favorite dish of the night, number 1 was the Gulf fish. If this was my last meal, I'm so happy I came to Commander's Palace here in New Orleans, Louisiana. See ya. All right, so that was my out of the restaurant review of Commander's Palace. Now, what I want to do now is really break down kind of each area there, from food to the ambiance, decor, service. Those are the things that I really kind of look in when I see a restaurant. And the reason why I like looking at those areas, back in the day, I used to pick up a Zagat magazine, one of the Zagat books, and they would have those different ratings. And I don't know, it just stuck with me back in 2007, 2008. Like, okay, you just kind of look at these things when it comes to a restaurant. So I think it's simple. As far as me breaking down the food, I'm just kind of putting this out front right now. I'm not a chef. I'm not gonna wow you with these vocabulary words like, oh, if it needed this pinch of salt that would give it some umami, or this ain't this YouTube channel, okay? The Food Network has plenty of amazing chefs that you can look at. I'm just gonna tell you, hey, this was amazing in my opinion, or not amazing, right? And this is just a very subjective experience. You and I, we could go to a movie, maybe one of my favorite Marvel movies there. I could have an incredibly positive experience watching the Marvel movie. You may have a negative experience and thought that the movie was not great. And that's okay. That's what the subjectivity of this is all about. So without further ado, let's get into each food there with Commander's Palace, starting with the appetizer portion. As you can see, the ratings that I have there. So I like to rate the food. Again, since I'm not like chef and I can just pull off all these things, I need some structure when it comes to these items. So, um, I kind of research some things, what to look for. So obviously taste, what's the balance, accuracy, right? Does the dish deliver on its flavor? Texture, does it have different textures that really, just kind of keep you guessing on what you're eating? Visual appeal, the plating. I mean, that's something that's just really important. Just, is it really neat or is it sloppy? The color contrast. We eat with our eyes, right? And if the color, is just not, appealing, then we're not going to be so, wowed by the dish prior to eating it. Uniqueness. A lot of times, you could have a dish that's a traditional dish, but you make it into kind of your own unique twist, and that really gives it something. And finally, the memorable factor, I would say, are you going to remember this dish, right? I mean, is it a dish that you would want to come back to every week? And that's something that I like to do. So now the first one off the list there is the chef's breakfast. Okay. All right. So you saw the video there of the chef's breakfast there. And so kind of going step by step here. The first one, let's talk about the taste. I mean, the this was I've never eaten anything like this before. I'm going to read off a little bit of the menu here that I took a picture that day. So it basically is the food description. It's a cast iron French truck chicory bacon. As you can see in the video, it definitely had bacon. I couldn't tell you if it was French truck chicory. I mean, that's obviously something that's out of my pay range there as far as expertise. Sunnyside quail egg. I've never ate quail before, so that was the first time. My wife has eaten quail previously, so she had prior knowledge as far as the quail. And then it had pork belly rillettes, probably saying that incorrectly. So again, people, I apologize on that. Louisiana figs, cornmeal jammy cakes, foie gras, red eye gravy. Okay, so that was really the dish. When I look at that dish, I thought, and just kind of, me looking at this video again of the dish, I would say it was quite innovative, just the presentation perspective. The so yeah, so as far as kind of the taste, I gave it was a 7 from that standpoint. Accuracy, I tasted bacon, I tasted kind of everything that, it was very accurate from that standpoint. The visual appeal of the dish, I thought it was just beautiful the way it was delivered. For that, I mean, because you had kind of this heart shape, it almost like a heart shape from that standpoint, and then you had the egg. You had the egg. You had the bacon. You had a little bit of the acidity with the onions and the pickles there to kind of balance out the dish. For me, again, this is subjectivity. I've never had a dish before, so I thought it was, incredibly unique from that standpoint. So I gave it a 7 there, and really a memorable factor. I mean, this appetizer for a brunch really blew me away. It was incredibly elevated. It was different, and again, since it was my first time, so my rating there was more of a 6.9 from that standpoint. Where it didn't get a complete 7 for me was the visual appeal, the actual plating right there. I always talk about these ratings. Now, I don't myself always rate everything here. My wife and I, we talk about these ratings together. So she felt that, you know, it could have been a little bit better with the plating. I mean, there was a, you know, and I kind of see what she was saying too. There was, you know, some empty spaces there on the plate that maybe could have used a little bit more kind of balance to the plate. But as far as this was a perfect dish. I mean, 6.9. I mean, you might as well, if we're rounding it up, it's a 7. Okay. Now, the next dish that we're going to talk about here, appetizer, was the turtle soup. All right, so there's the video again of the turtle soup. Again, overall, it was a strong dish. I gave it overall a 6.7 out of 7 points. Now, where the dish, now, this trip that I took to New Orleans, I got exposed more to turtle soup. So I had a little bit of a comparison on this trip. So for me, this wasn't the best turtle soup that I had during this trip. I'll talk about that. There's another restaurant that I felt that was probably the best when it came to the turtle soup. So as far as balance, flavor, I mean, I gave it a 6.5 out of 7 from that incredibly strong. The accuracy, obviously, that's what it tasted like. It tasted as a turtle soup. Texture, it definitely had different textures there. I'll kind of read off a little bit the menu here, kind of the ingredients that it had. So let me kind of put here. So they called it the turtle soup au cherry. Okay, so it's Louisiana favorite with rich veal fond, chopped egg, and crushed lemon, finished tableside with a splash of aged sherry. Okay. Yes, it definitely had a lot of different textures there with the veal. I mean, you definitely tasted that. The visual appeal of it, again, I gave it a 7. I thought it was just, you know, the plating, you know, it was perfect. I mean, it's a soup. You can't really, you know, place it in any different way. It's just what it is, right? It's a, you know, it was a beautiful dish. The color, again, I gave that part a 7. Beautiful color. It really, I mean, you fall in love with it the second you see it. Uniqueness, was it a completely unique dish? No. Again, because this trip I started having turtle soups at different restaurants that I went to there. So yeah. So and then I had a comparison. So for me, it wasn't, you know, totally a unique twist on a classic from that standpoint. And is it memorable? I mean, for me, it's a 6.5 out of 7. It's absolutely a memorable soup from that standpoint. And if I were to go back to Commander's Palace again, if I'm in the city, I definitely would have that again. So again, that was 6.7 out of 7. All right, now we're going to move on into the entrees here. And we're going to look at now the pecan crusted Gulf fish. So that was the pecan crusted Gulf fish. Now, to read a little bit of the description here of the Gulf fish. So it had Prosecco poached jumbo lump crab over spiced New Roads pecan crusted fish with roasted corn, asparagus, grilled kale, melted leeks, and whiskey spike crush corn cream. I got to tell you, this dish had all that. It was a lot to dig in. So let's kind of get into the specific ratings here. So as far as balance, I mean, I gave this dish a 6.8 out of 7. I mean, it was a phenomenal dish. It was just amazing. And kind of breaking down each category there, as far as flavor, right? The balance of the dish. I mean, that was 7. Accuracy, all those elements were in that dish. Again, that was a 7 out of 7. Texture, as you can tell, it had a lot going on. So, I mean, you were kind of on a roller coaster ride there, just kind of with different textures, different flavors. It was incredible. Where I kind of gave it a little bit of a lower score was in the plating of it. For me, again, the plating, I mean, as far as the fish and everything on top of it, and then you just had the cream, right? The corn cream on the bottom. I felt that it was a little messy. For again, this is a Commander's Palace, it's an elevated place, so I am taking it from that standpoint. And maybe that could have been, a little bit cleaner from that standpoint, from the cream point of view. Color contrast, again, that was a 7. I mean, it just had, yeah, I mean, you see the dish, it just screamed love for me, right, from that standpoint. The uniqueness of the dish, again, this was another trip where I was having Gulf fish, and I've had fish before, so it wasn't like such a unique thing that I was eating. Obviously, the different elements that were involved with it, with lump crab and the pecan crusted, the crunchiness there, the corn. So that there were some parts that definitely gave it a unique kind of twist to it from that standpoint. And memorability, was the memorable factor. I gave it a 7. I mean, yes, if I were to go back to Commander's Palace, I would definitely go back to eat this dish. It was by far an amazing experience, and my wife was the one that ordered this dish. By the way, footnote here: I don't need all this food. Everybody thinks when I put out these videos, no, my wife and I were eating, so I, get a piece from her so I could do it for the video component. If I ate all this food, it would not be good health wise. So yeah, portion control, people. This I do not eat all this. Obviously when I go out, I eat one dish that I'm focused on. But for the video purposes, my wife allows me for food content here, so I can share it with you all. So yeah, so overall, that was the 6.8 out of 7 for the pecan Gulf crusted fish, right? So Gulf fish, I apologize. So now the next one here, the orange peel quail. That was the orange peel quail. Just to remind you, this dish was a perfect 7 out of 7 from that standpoint. So I'm gonna go now here, kind of bring up the actual menu on what it had. So it was called the orange peel spice sugar cane painted quail. So it was charred chili smoked pork boudin stuffed quail over tangy bacon and apple cider braised cabbage with rustic roots. Wow, that's a very fancy explanation here, but yes, crystal pepper pulp and sticky sweet and sour satsuma jelly. Okay, so a lot of these ingredients I've never been exposed to, so yes, it did have all that. All right, it did have all those ingredients, absolutely. So why was this dish, and maybe I'm biased, was a perfect 7 out of 7? It was the first time I ate quail. And a lot of times when it's the first time you eat anything, you're going to be completely just blown away by that experience, especially if it was just a memorable one. So this was my first time eating a dish like that. So I gave it 7s across the board. It was well balanced. The accuracy, everything that was on that description basically was on that dish. For texture, I mean, again, it's kind of that roller coaster ride experience that I was explaining previously with the Gulf fish, right? You just, you were just kind of taken for this ride with all the different elements that were involved in it. The color, I thought the color was beautiful. It really captivated you. The this is where it kind of differentiates here on the plating, the versus the Gulf fish. So if you notice the plating here, the sauce of it, the sauce, it wasn't like the sauce wasn't the star of the dish per se. The Gulf fish, I felt like there was this just big amount of sauce on the bottom. Again, I didn't complain because the sauce was excellent, but it could have been a little bit more refined. Whereas the quail here, it had, it was just nice. It was just a beautiful, everything was elegant there. It didn't feel like a big slop of sauce on the bottom. All right. So again, memorable factor, 7 out of 7. This dish had my heart. It was the perfect dish, the quail. And I gave it a perfect 7 out of 7. All right, so now we are moving on to desserts here. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the bread pudding. So that was the bread pudding. And again, I mean, this overall, as you notice the ratings there, I gave it 6.9 out of 7. It was a great dessert. I mean, you could cherry pick. I mean, you could be picky about certain things, but my goodness, this was a treat there. So kind of going from the standpoint there, I'm going to read to you the description. Doesn't have much of a description. It's the queen of Creole desserts, finished tableside with warm whiskey cream. Okay, so you have to order this 20 minutes in advance. So once you place the order, obviously they have to do it and from whatever they're doing on the operation side in the back in the kitchen area. So to make this divine beauty perfect, right? So as far as flavor, right, balance, I mean, 7 out of 7. Accuracy, yes, it tasted like a bread pudding. It was just divine. The texture, it was kind of that. Maybe that's where I can kind of be a little picky there. It was just kind of the same texture. I mean, again, it's bread pudding, but maybe if you add a little bit of crunch to it, and again, I'm not a chef. I couldn't tell you how you maybe you could add crushed, I don't know, crushed some type of crushed nuts, pecan or something. Again, this is very subjective from that. The visual appeal, the plating. I mean, I loved it just because it felt like it came out of the oven. There was this perfect, bread pudding, just a little bit over. The presentation of it was great. The color. I mean, just that's where I can maybe give you I could be a little picky there because it was just kind of the same color with the cream and the bread pudding. So maybe some contrast there would have helped out. Again, I'm not a chef. I'm just telling you from my layman's point of view here. This is what I think that could have really elevated those two for me to sevens. And then uniqueness, again, I've had bread puddings before. This was unique just because it came in a cup like this and then it was just kind of open and I don't know. I mean, it was definitely unique in my opinion. And then memorable, phenomenal, 7 out of 7. I definitely will remember this bread pudding. And that's why I gave it a 6.9 out of 7. All right, now the last dessert is the strawberry shortcake. So that was the panchatula strawberry shortcake. Now to read the description here, it's the first of the season sweet Louisiana strawberries, over a warm, fluffy buttermilk biscuit. Yes, that biscuit was way amazing on that standpoint. And with chantilly cream. Again, never had that before. So for me, that was first time from that standpoint. I mean, again, we could nitpick here. This dish was pretty much a perfect dish. Where my wife and I, when we were talking about the rating, she felt a little bit with the balance of it, which I could see her point. Again, and this stuff is very subjective. I would have personally gave it a 7. She thought 6.5. Could have had kind of a slight more balance to the dish. The originality of it, the memorable factor, it was a 6.5 that I gave it. I mean, it was a great dish, but what if I'm comparing it again to other strawberry shortcakes that I have, there's some that are a little bit better than this one. Not to downgrade anything from this strawberry shortcake, but I've had better in the past. So yes, this was a 6.9 out of 7. Perfect dish from that standpoint. Okay, so we broke down the food here. Price. Okay, when we went to Commander's Palace, again, this was the holiday season here, so they have special menus from that standpoint. So they had a lot of different options. We ordered a lot. Again, when you go on vacation, you tend to order more just because you're not going to go back to that restaurant. I mean, you don't live in the city, so you try to order as many kind of different dishes so you could get kind of that full-blown experience. We paid $100 a person. Again, mind you, if I lived in New Orleans, probably be a little bit less than that, just because my wife and I, if we had been there a few times, we probably would have shared, I don't know, we would have shared a dessert versus getting 2 desserts. We would have shared an appetizer versus getting 2 different appetizers on that. So from that standpoint, but again, the place is more on the pricier side from that standpoint. Portions though are great. Quality is amazing. So again, I don't mind paying $100 a person because from this standpoint, food, like if you're a restaurant, food has to be the number one thing for me. And Commander's Palace really symbolizes that. I mean, each dish that you had there was just above and beyond that I felt was just amazing from that standpoint. So again, price was $100 a person. Food, well worth it. Okay. The ambiance of it, there was live music, and I'm going to show you here just a quick video of the live music. That was the kind of live music. Again, it was the holiday season, live jazz. They would go to each table. I kind of missed out the, I don't know why my phone didn't play the sound for the music they sang to my wife and I on that table, but it was, now it's Christmas time in New Orleans, right? So first time I had heard that song a long time ago, but you go to New Orleans, you go to a jazz bar and they were playing that, and I was just like, oh my goodness, what an amazing song this is. And I don't know, now to this day, I mean, I'm singing that song from time to time. I catch myself, could be, I don't know, doing anything, cooking or something, then I just start singing that. It just takes me back to that moment in New Orleans, right? So ambiance, I gave it a 7 from that point of view. Decor, again, restaurant is beautiful. It just has this historical element that you feel when you go in there. I love when you go to the restaurant on the outside, it's this turquoise color. I mean, it just pops to you, and I don't know. I'm a big Miami Dolphins fan, so I will say that. So when I see the turquoise color, I kind of get a little biased from that. So again, it was really beautiful color decor. Gave it a 7 out of 7. Service. This is where again I say food is number one, but your number two, followed by that, that's really, really important for me is the service. You know, when I go to any restaurant, and every restaurant is going to have different service, right? The if you're going to go to the your local Flanagan's or Ale House, it's a bar. You're gonna have a certain type of service, right? I go to a place like Commander's Palace. I'm gonna expect, if I'm paying, $100 a person, I'm gonna expect a different level of service because again, you're paying a premium for food here, so the service better be there. And I gave this a 7 out of 7. This was the best service that I've had since I ate at a restaurant in Montreal. My wife and I, we took a road trip the summer before in Montreal. We ate at Bouillon Bilk, and by far for me that night there was one person that was helping us, and it was just phenomenal service. This service at Commander's Palace went there. The waiter, it was just really the team of people. It was the waiter, the hospitality, the timing of the food coming out. They really paced out, timed the food perfectly when it came out, because a lot of times, again, this is very subjective. My wife loves this. I don't love this. I don't like when all the food comes out at one time. That's a pet peeve of mine, because now I feel rushed to eat everything versus kind of, okay, here's the appetizer. All right, let's focus on the appetizer. Then we have a moment, we have a drink. Then comes the whatever next, the entree. That when everything is either delayed or comes out simultaneously, that's a no-no for me. But again, Commander's Palace, perfect, right? From their service, pacing of the food, everything was amazing. So, and overall, this I gave it a 27.9 out of 28. This was the best restaurant I've eaten at in this year. I mean, I can't, if I eat at another restaurant that's better than Commander's Palace, that would be if this was my last meal, because it literally was a perfect day for my wife and I in New Orleans eating brunch, and I just had a phenomenal experience. And so now, have you all eaten Commander's Palace? Again, I've given you my opinion of that. If you have, please comment here in the comment section below. Also, if you like my video, click like and subscribe to If This Was My Last Meal. See ya!